You can rent one billionaire's island for the week. On another, you can't even find out who bought it. And the wildest part isn't the price. It's how easily the owner can disappear. Let's find out who's actually out there. Level 1. The island you can rent. Not every billionaire island is off limits. Level 1 is the exception. Richard Branson's Necker Island in the British Virgin Islands reportedly rents in full for tens of thousands a night, sometimes north of $80,000 at peak season. He reportedly bought the whole island back in 1978 for somewhere around $180,000, back when nobody wanted a hurricane-exposed rock with no fresh water on it. A fire reportedly tore through the main house in 2011, mid-hurricane, with Branson's own family and staff riding it out inside. He rebuilt it anyway. Beaches, staff, the whole fantasy, for exactly as long as your card survives it. The island reportedly sleeps up to about 40 guests across the main house and a cluster of Balinese-style villas, which is presumably why the per-night price scales so hard once a group gets that large. And from here, the islands get harder to access and stranger to own. Level 2. The billionaire who bought 98% of an island. Wait, what? An entire Hawaiian island. For most of the 20th century, Lanai wasn't a billionaire's playground at all. It was reportedly the largest pineapple plantation on Earth, run by Dole, an entire island economy built around a single fruit crop that eventually collapsed when growing pineapples in Hawaii stopped being cost competitive with cheaper overseas production. In 2012, Larry Ellison reportedly bought around 98% of Lanai, 141 square miles, roughly 3,000 residents, for a price reported in the hundreds of millions. Not a resort, not a coastline, 98% of the island. And you can still visit. That's what makes Lanai so strange. He doesn't own the people. He doesn't own the entire island. But he owns almost everything underneath them. Both of the island's luxury resorts, a huge share of the housing, the water utility, the local newspaper, and reportedly a majority of the jobs on Lanai in one way or another. Generous, unsettling, probably both. Level 3. The island that started a legal war. Picture this. Your family has held tiny pieces of land on Kauai for generations. Ownership is split between descendants. Generations of inheritance have turned it into a legal maze. Then, a company connected to Mark Zuckerberg takes you to court. That's reportedly what happened around Mark Zuckerberg's roughly 700-acre estate on Kauai, purchased in 2014 for a reported $100 million. In 2016, entities connected to Zuckerberg reportedly filed a series of quiet title and partition lawsuits against people holding fractional, undivided interests in small parcels inside his property. In some cases, interests worth only a few $100s, split among dozens of descendants who'd never formally sorted out who owned what. That kind of legal process can ultimately force a sale of the land at public auction. He reportedly still owns the estate today, just without the lawsuits attached to it, a resolution that left the underlying question, who actually holds these fractional interests, formally unresolved rather than answered. And suddenly, billionaire buys Hawaiian estate becomes something much uglier. Hold on, that's allowed? Because tech billionaires didn't invent buying islands. Rich men have been doing it for generations. Level 4. The island that made billionaire privacy famous. Aristotle Onassis bought Scorpios in 1963 and reportedly spent millions turning it into a private compound, importing soil from other parts of Greece and France to build gardens on what had previously been a barren, largely useless piece of rock nobody else particularly wanted. He reportedly planted over 200,000 trees across the island's roughly 500 acres, turning scrubland into something resembling a private forest within a few years. World leaders visited. He married Jackie Kennedy there in 1968. His own son, Alexander, reportedly died in a plane crash in 1973, a loss friends said Onassis never fully recovered from, and he's reportedly buried on the island himself. A barely inhabited island had become one of the most famous private retreats on Earth. Level 5. The people who sell islands. Yes, private island brokers are a real thing. Their listings aren't houses, they're islands. A few $100,000 for bare land. Hundreds of millions for fully developed compounds. Firms like Private Islands Inc. and Vladdy Private Islands have built entire businesses around exactly one product category, and reportedly nothing else. And these brokers deal with problems normal real estate agents never think about. Sovereignty, environmental permits, fresh water, access, infrastructure. Some deals close without the buyer ever setting foot on the property. And sometimes, the buyer's name isn't publicly disclosed at all. Buying a house needs an agent. Buying an island needs a specialist. Some of these listings read like a joke that isn't one. Private Islands Inc. has reportedly listed everything from Caribbean sandbars for under $100,000 to fully staffed Bahamian estates well into 8 figures, on the exact same website, scrolled past the same way you'd scroll past used cars. One listing reportedly priced a fully furnished 10-acre island in Belize at under $300,000, cheaper than a 2-bedroom apartment in most major cities. Level 6. The owner nobody can find. Now we're not speculating. These are real sales. The buyer's name still isn't public. Shelter Island on Montana's Flathead Lake sold in 2018. Broker Dawn Maddox said she couldn't disclose the buyer or the sale price. The buyer was described only as an anonymous world traveler. Then there's Horse Island, off Ireland. 157 acres, 7 houses, 5.5 million euros. Negotiated over WhatsApp during the 2020 lockdowns, with the buyer viewing the island only through video. Private island brokers have reportedly handled similar anonymous closings elsewhere too, across the Caribbean and along the Canadian coast. Deals where the listing goes public and the buyer never does. The transaction was public, the person behind it wasn't. That's billionaire privacy at a different level. And eventually, money stops being enough. There are rooms where $1 billion gets you absolutely nothing. Admission runs on a 300-year-old ballot system. One anonymous objection can end it. I wrote a book about how that system works. It's called The Room. Links in the description. Now back to the islands, because Level 7 changes the entire game. Level 7. The island that isn't really private. Here's where the entire premise breaks. You buy an island, you assume you own the whole thing, top to bottom, sand to tree line, and every wave that touches it. You don't always own the shoreline. In Hawaii, public shoreline access is legally protected. State law defines a public beach transit corridor running along the shoreline that no landowner, however wealthy, can legally block. In a lot of coastal jurisdictions worldwide, the pattern repeats in some form. Sweden and Norway have long-standing right-to-roam traditions that let the public cross private land, including much of the coastline, regardless of who owns it. Parts of the UK have similar public rights-of-way carved directly through private estates, footpaths a landowner legally cannot block, even if the land on either side is entirely theirs. The water's edge belongs to everyone, no matter whose name is on the deed for the land behind it. So you can own the island, you don't automatically own the edge of the ocean. That's the line money can't buy its way past. And if you want the version with the receipts, the ballots, the trusts, the 7 rungs, it's all linked below. QR's on screen. See you in the next one.